So, Theodicious' trap is basically when a rising, already established power um, comes in, and it's, as I said, it's already established, and it's very much um, seen as the power in the area. But then you have that power, that world power, and then you have down here a smaller unknown power, a rising country, basically that poses a challenge for this larger um, country. This challenge usually is created either because um, the larger country, the larger power, might have had this country as a territory, or the smaller country might have broken off from the larger country, or it just might be a neighboring country. But as I said, this creates tension, and most prominently, it can lead to war. This is how wars are started. Basically, an upcoming country challenges a larger country, and it scares the heck out of them. So it creates a lot of tension forth and back. Back and forth, excuse me. This is most notably seen in the American Revolution, basically. The American Revolution, this is what the American Revolution was. The United States was a colony, and it broke right away from Britain. And in the early stages, once the United States became the United States, it posed somewhat of a threat for Great Britain, eventually going on, and the two are now allies. So this can work in many different ways. This is also very much seen in the historically in the Sparta versus Athens. We can trace it all the way back to Sparta versus Athens, historically speaking. And if we're looking at something that's more present day, we can look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That's definitely a 100%. If you look at that, that is one of the best modern day examples of this. Going on, Allison wrote a book about this, and it's mainly focused around the United States and China, and how the United States, how this trap implies to international relations with the United States and China and their foreign policy. Speaking actually to this, there has been sometimes tension between the United States and China, but if we're looking at right now, there's not that much tension. Both leaders, Trump here in America and Jinping in China, they both want to make their countries great again. Both, China's kind of adopted the United States, Trump's, motto of "Make America Great Again" to make China great again. So both of them have the kind of the same viewpoint, and they want to both make their countries great as possible as they can. This leads to a lot of great open communication between the two countries. The leaders from both sides, America and China, are both very open and communicate very well with each other. Also going off this, another thing that they have good with their international relations is the fact that both China and the United States have a great trade partnership with each other. This great trade partnership is one of the reasons that there isn't really this tension. So this trap can work in two different ways. It can work where it creates a lot of tension. It can work more or less where there's all these revolving things that make everything neutral. Going off of that, they also, not only do they have a great trade partnership, but here's where the tension comes into play. They have mutually assured destruction. Basically, they can't, neither country can declare war on the other country, because they know as soon as that happens, the other one could possibly wipe out the other. China is definitely very much aware of this, thinking that the United States could possibly, wipe out. So they wipe out China, so they won't go to that extreme, basically. As I said, both leaders have very, very good communication. They're both very open with each other. They both communicate very well with each other. Now that maybe for some reasons more than others, but again, they both communicate very well. And this shows kind of that they want to make not only their country greater, but in part making the other country greater so that they can, live off the benefits of that. And they both understand that it would be a terrible, terrible option if they went to war with each other, because in a way they might, they're allies, but in a way they understand that if war broke out, it would be terrifying, and that they would risk their own country's stability, and they wouldn't do that, because there could be possibly no country. Going off of all that, I want to switch over and kind of talk to how foreign policy kind of changed in the United States. Under Washington's administration, of course, there was, great, great kind of like a relaxing point, a neutral point where they were trying to make their country what it was. Britain is kind of sitting here like an older brother or sister, like poking them, like, hey, what are you doing? You okay? Hello? Like trying to annoy them to the fact that, and break them down, break the United States down into the fact that they could possibly invade the United States and take the United States back, because that's what they wanted. Even though Britain kind of left, they wanted to like knock them down a peg and wanted to do anything they could possibly do. Additionally, there were a lot of treaties that were being signed stating that Native Americans could keep their land and could stay on their land. Everything is basically all good. The Native Americans are happy. The United States have their 13 states. John Quincy Adams got so kind of annoyed and frustrated with Great Britain that he actually said, keep what is yours and leave the rest of the continent to us. So Britain still had some land holdings and around the United States, and also, France was in there, and then Spain was in there. And they didn't want the Great Britain, they were just being so annoying with land, and basically that was the big piece. Whoever had the most land was the greatest world power. That being said, that after John Quincy Adams, who was the Secretary of State to George Washington, basically told them to go away, everything was still fine. There was a cooling off period. Then things got a little imperialistic. The United States never wanted to be an imperialistic country, but things kind of can be pointed towards that. What I mean by that is the fact that if you look at an example, the United States started getting a little bit greedy. They pushed all those Native American treaties. They basically went back on those treaties and said, you know what, yeah, we told you can have your land, but we're actually going to take all the land. And that's how they keep pushing out and out and out until they get to California, and from sea to shining sea, basically that's what happens. This can also be seen where the United States tries thinking, let's take Canada. Let's take Canada from the French. And they try going up into Canada and Quebec, and they fail enormously, and they realize that they just can't do that. They don't have the firepower, basically, to take a country like that. And France isn't too happy about that either. It kind of ticks them off. This can also be very much seen where they push the Indians out and they take all the land to California, but then you have to think about the South. So the South is predominantly Spanish. Florida is a huge chip in this, and it is today in political elections, and it was back then in land negotiations. It was with Britain and the United States, it was with the United States and France, it was with the United States and Spain. Everyone wanted Florida for some reason, and a lot of people were like, why? It's all swamps. It was a piece of land. And the United States eventually pushes Spain and like Mexico out of Mexico, the Spanish out of Southern America, and pushes them into where current day Mexico is, and says, no, this is going to be our land, and they took that. This can be all the way seen up until the Alaskan Purchase, where they, basically buy Alaska, and that becomes the 50th state. Going off of this, many presidents and leaders of the United States have varied in their imperialistic beliefs. One of these really big turning points is World War II. If you look at Wilson and his international relation and foreign policy strategy in World War II, you look at the fact that he basically said, we're going to go back to this whole John Quincy Adams thing where we're not going to interfere with other countries' foreign relations, because then we're going to get screwed with something. And that turned out very good, because they basically sat back, watched the war while producing and manufacturing American weapons and American firearms that they would sell to other European countries. And those European countries would buy them from the United States and use them in the war, all of them. So the United States was very neutral during this time period, and then towards the end of the war, they teamed up with Great Britain, which is where this Britain connection comes really strongly. Great Britain and France to push out the Germans out of the war, basically, and to fight against the Germans, because 3 superpowers against 1 is better than nothing. That being said, after the war, the United States had a great economic boom because of all this manufacturing that they did with the war. The war really was a great bargaining chip for them, because they got so much out of it. They got a great economy out of it. Then they also got a lot of jobs were produced because they had to manufacture this. In addition, there was a population boom, and there was a large amount of respect for the United States, and this became the turning point where the United States was regarded as this extremely large and capable superpower, where they could join in with France and Great Britain. Again, this booming economy and population increased, and these solid trade partnerships and relations with other countries, this made the United States a major player on the world stage. And that's how kind of foreign relations in the United States has changed over since the colonies.